Alrighty, welcome back to the Codex, everyone. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of a rapid-fire video on how insane Saryn is. Now, obviously, anybody who's played the game for more than approximately 13 picoseconds is aware of the fact that Saryn is absolutely wild. She's one of the best frames in the game, but not everybody specifically understands the mechanics of actually why. They just know that she kills stuff. So I'm going to go through Saryn herself as well as just showing a loadout of weapons that's specifically quite incredible on her. So first off, we'll start off with just the actual Saryn build here, my Saryn build. It looks pretty different than a lot of people's. The amount of people that have said that my build doesn't have enough range is hard to count, honestly. It's more of a weapons platform survivability build that still has plenty of range for spores to spread, which is basically the main complaint that people have about the build. Now, it is a very expensive setup, as you can obviously see. I believe you could actually use one less Umbra Forma on this loadout if you just polarized. Yeah, because I still have 8 capacity left over, so you don't actually need 3 Umbra Forma. The reason why I have 3 is because I was testing out with different, more expensive mods, for example. Archon continuity is on here. This technically doesn't really do anything. Well, it technically does do something. It makes it so that when your molt explodes, since that causes toxin damage, this does trigger Archon continuity. So it would also proc corrosive. That's irrelevant. You don't need to use that. Ironically, Archon stretch is probably actually more relevant, even though Saryn obviously doesn't proc electric unless you helmet on some electric ability. If you're playing with like a Wisp, for example, and a Wisp puts down the shock motes, you picking up the shock motes that shocks nearby enemies off of you counts as you having an ability on you that procs electricity, so that would give you energy regen. And then Archon flow will basically never have a use unless you put on Thermal Sunder, for example, and like kill stuff with Cold Sunder, then it could technically trigger. But all of these fit on my build, so if I wanted to, I mean, I could run them. It doesn't make a difference. Their main stats, like the energy this gives, the duration this gives, the range this gives, are the same as the base ones. It's just a matter of whether or not the secondary effect is actually relevant. Now, the reason I'm using Combat Discipline, which looks perhaps like a downside at first because you lose 10 health every time you kill someone, but your squad mates gain 20 health. The reason I'm using this is not because it helps the squad mates. I'm using this because the health loss from getting kills from Combat Discipline actually triggers the condition of Arcane Avenger, which says on damaged, 21% chance for plus 45% critical chance for 12 seconds. On damage means when you take health damage, and this health damage counts towards that. So even if you're killing enemies so fast that they don't get a chance to actually hit you, to have the enemy damage trigger this, you can just trigger it yourself. Like, it's basically constantly up because every single time you kill someone, basically, you have a 21% chance to gain this effect. This is extremely strong, by the way, for anybody who's not aware. 45% crit chance doesn't sound like a lot when you're like, oh, Point Strike gives 150%, or Critical Delay gives 200%. This is not modded crit chance. This is not 45% of the weapon's crit chance, like if the weapon says 10% crit chance at base. This doesn't add 4.5. This literally adds 45% crit chance. So if a weapon has 10% crit chance, it goes from 10 to 55%. So this is an insane crit boost. It's especially, obviously, it's good on weapons that already are crit weapons in the first place, but you can also make weapons that basically can't crit or don't crit very well, like a Kuvanucor or like a Proboscis Cerno, so you can force them to crit at least some of the time, which is a huge damage bonus for them, because usually a lot of weapons like that have low crit have really good base damage. So if you make them crit on top of that, it's quite a bit. Arcane Energize is obviously just, for energy like usual. Venom Dose is amazing. It's just extra corrosive damage, and this does scale with power strength. So where it says it adds 100% corrosive damage to you and your teammates, if you have 200% strength, then that'll be 200%, and so on, so on. Augur Reach combined with Stretch. This is the 2 range mods I have on. The Reach also gives a little bit of shield gating upon like spamming Molt, for example, if you need that. And Prime Surefooted, so you don't get knocked down. Obviously, if you don't have this yet because you haven't logged in enough, you can use a different mod. You could use, sorry for that alarm noise there, you could use regular Surefooted, you could use Handspring, or you could just use something unrelated altogether. So, one of the reasons why Saryn is so good, one of the main reasons, is because Especially if you're also using Venom Dose. That means that you're getting extra toxin damage from Toxic Lash, and you're getting extra corrosive damage from Venom Dose. So not only is that just more damage because you're adding toxin corrosive damage, which also means that you're getting the status effects of toxin, which is a dot, and the status effect of corrosive, which is stripping armor, but you're also getting 2 more status effects for the Galvanize mod. So here's a Phantasma build, for example. I am using a Riven. I'll go ahead and take that off, because I know a lot of people won't have one. So Galvanize Savvy, for example, gives you, once this is stacked up, it gives you 80% extra base damage per status type. So right there, that's an extra 160% base damage just from having those 2 extra status effects. On the secondary mods, it's even more potent. Galvanized Shot gives 120% extra base damage per unique status effect. So since this build doesn't already have corrosive and toxin, those are 2 new things. So that is another 240% base damage. Again, along with the actual effects of corrosive and toxin. So that's a huge amount of damage. And I have as you can see, there's a trend here. I have a lot of ribbons. I'll go ahead and take that off, put that up there, put a regular Target Cracker back on, so you won't be, thinking that it's because of the ribbons that you're killing stuff. It's like, no, it's because Saryn is insane. So I'll go ahead and take this one off too, and put the standard Corrupt Charge back on, so now my build is ribbonless. So the Aki Core, since we showed that briefly, is also especially amazing on Saryn. This weapon is, with Sentient Surge and essentially this specific build, is already great even without buffs. But once you buff this build, especially with the combination of Avenger makes this crit chance go up to 99%, because this 16% is actually going to be 54% in mission, because Sentient Surge gives you crit chance and status chance. And once it's stacked up all the way, you'll have 54% crit chance. So Avenger takes it to 99%, so basically always critting. So that's a huge damage increase. And then again, you throw in the extra 240% base damage along with the stripping armor and the toxin. It's crazy. You'll see how crazy it is. The Zorus is, with melee influence, is always good, but pairs especially well with Saryn because the extra guaranteed toxin procs. Thank you, Lotus, for that update. The balance of power continues to shift. Yes. So melee influence specifically is able to taxi the extra toxin procs as well from Toxin Lash. So it's notably effective on her, as you'll see. So we will go and show you how crazy this is. Oh, don't forget Archon shards. So I am using the classic choice of 2 Emerald Archon shards on her for the increased corrosive stacks, which makes her corrosive procs able to fully strip armor. And keep in mind that her spores do corrosive procs, so spreading spores around the map means that enemies basically run to you with no armor on. Then I'm using 2 ability strength shards and 1 parkour shard. These are all Tau Forged. Now, you probably understand why the strength shards and the parkour velocity shards are Tau Forged, but you might not understand why the corrosive shards would be Tau Forged. The reason for that is, and the reason I say that is because if you just have 2 of these that's not Tau Forged, then it gives you the 14 corrosive stacks, which is 100% armor strip on most enemies. The reason why I did put these Tau Forged is because the enemies in the game that have status caps, like the Acolytes, plural, and the Necromechs in the Sanctum Anatomica, they have status caps. The really fun thing about these shards is that these shards override the status cap. So, for example, if you have 2 of the regular Emerald shards on, instead of only being able to apply 4 corrosive procs, you can apply 8. So by making these both Tau Forged, that's 2 extra procs on top of that, so you can go from 4 to 10. So that's an extra 12% armor strip, basically. So it's just a little bit of extra damage. It's quite min-maxy. It's not necessary. It won't matter for regular enemies. So don't worry about, like, oh, I have to get Tau Forged Emeralds. You don't have to. You can just get regular. Or you can get none. Like, this build murdered before these shards. This just makes it even more insane. So let's go to... We'll just go to Akuba Survival on Steel Path, of course, because the enemy density there is real nice. Man, you can see how absolutely wild that she is. Now, obviously, I'm showcasing the Phantasma. I just wanted to showcase something that's not the Tord, basically. Obviously, if you use the Tord on Saryn, you're gonna murder, because if you use the Tord on anybody, you're gonna murder. She's great with anything. Any of your classic choices, the Bursting Karn and the Tord, the insert blank here, basically, is gonna be good on Saryn. Drop energy pad. I wanted to show the Phantasma because a lot of people don't understand how insane the Phantasma is. Unbuffed, but especially when buffed. So you can see enemies just get... You see how low my health is getting? So I wanted to showcase there. That's what happens if you don't turn Gloom on. Because one thing I didn't mention, it's on the build, but I am using Sevigos Gloom over her 4th ability. So now that I have this on, you'll see that I'm losing 10 health every kill, but it doesn't matter because I'm constantly regenning. And as you can see, the Phantasma is absolutely nutty on this. I'm using Venom Dose to add corrosive damage. I got the Toxin procs from her 3rd ability. You can see a ton of these enemies, they just have no armor. Basically, the instant I look at them, combined with the spores that have already spread to them before I got to them, they have no armor. You can that's signified by their health bars turning red because they lose all their armor. Now let's pull out the Ocucore. This thing is just aimbot. You barely have to look at the direction you're shooting. It has like a 60-degree auto aim, auto connect zone. I mean, you can't even like see. You can't even see half the enemies that I'm killing right now because there's just so many numbers on the screen. So I already have 182 kills. Now let's show off the Zorus here, and once that procs melee influence. See, now it's a minute 30. Let's see. I had just under 200 kills with the Zorus starting at minute 30. Let's see how many kills I have by the time that it gets to 230. All right. Just gonna keep on killing with the Zorus here. Oh, fun fact, while we're waiting on that, I do apologize for the audio issues in the previous videos where the audio of me talking like I am right now was only coming out of the left ear. I had to fix a setting on my microphone to get it switched to single channel audio now. So that issue should no longer appear in this video, for example, and future videos. I did put a note on all of the videos that audio issue affected. So yeah, just wanted to apologize for that, basically. Should be resolved from now on, though, so we should be smooth sailing in regards to that. Now, the other problem I need to fix is my keyboard clicks being in the video. Alright, it's now the 2-minute 30 mark, and we're at 327 kills. So, not bad. Actually, would have been a lot more if I didn't have Gloom on, for example, because I was technically slowing down enemies on the outer edges of the map. There's been times where I've gotten 200 KPM just using the Zorus. It's absolutely wild. You can see the spore spreading all around the map here. Even on Steel Path, because of the fact that they're stripping armor, they're even killing people, like without me actually interacting with them whatsoever. Because removing armor is such a enormous damage increase. Like, at very low levels, it's literally increasing your damage by over 100 times because of the amount of an enemy's effective health that comes from armor and not their actual health. Like, for example, if you are amazed at how fast these enemies are dying at you know, like, quote-unquote, this level, it might not be impressive to you, depending on where you are in the game, because, I mean, this is Steel Path, but for most people, this isn't actually that crazy. But, for example, like a level 200 heavy gunner on Steel Path has an actual health of only like 250,000 or something like that. That only goes up to like 1 million or like 1,000,005 on level cap, like level 10,000, which means they only gain like 6x their HP. Their EHP goes into the billions because of the tens of hundreds of whatever, the thousands of armor. But if you take all that off, they're barely different than like a level 200 enemy. There goes the Acolyte, by the way, get roasted. So yeah, armor scaling is insane. Obviously, that might be changing with the upcoming changes that the most recent, at least at the time of recording this video, the most recent dev stream was talking about. Pablo mentioned, like, oh, he might be basically nerfing armor and increasing health somewhat. So we'll see how that turns out. I'm not a huge fan of what they discussed. If it's, depending on what direction it moves the enemies in, it sounds like it's an attempt to basically be a nerf to enemies. And if you're already using builds like this, for example, or anywhere close to this, you're already annihilating enemies, so nerfing them is just not gonna feel good for some people. But I can understand it for, you know, newer players, maybe. But yeah, this has been a, just a Saryn showcase, basically. There's probably a few particular things I haven't gone over. If you have any questions or comments or any feelings about the video, you can leave it, you know, in the comments down below. Hopefully you liked it. Basically just wanted to give a somewhat quick rundown of how and why Saryn is so absolutely busted. Yeah, hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next Codex video, everyone. Goodbye.